Hi everyone, it's Anne. Welcome to my channel, Head Trip Creations, where I do mixed media portrait art. I had so much fun doing this vintage gal with tons of texture. I used a lot of different techniques, and I'll admit it, a crazy process, but I think no pain, no gain. I love the way she turned out. I can't wait to show you how I did it. The video will start now. Enjoy. So the first thing I did was wound up a sheet of 7 by 10 watercolor paper. That's 90 pound. And instead of drawing on that, I decided to sketch her out on a sheet of tissue paper. And using a mechanical pencil, I figured this was a pretty good practice because if I didn't like how it turned out, I can just use another sheet of tissue paper. And I can also position it however I want once it's done. And if I do like it, which I did, not only will I be able to have her sketch on the piece, but it adds instant texture. And so I'm going over all of the lines with the mechanical pencil, and I'm just slowing it down a little bit so you can see how I'm drawing it. I know some of you are interested in the features. So you can see I'm just doing the lid here. You saw how I did the pupils. I'm lining up the nostrils with the corners of the eyes, adding the shadow under her nose, and this is the shape of her face. And now this is matte Mod Podge, and it does create some kind of a shine, which is problematic with the camera. But throughout the entire process, there's a lot of glare, but every now and then I tip the piece and you can see how she looks at that phase. This is a Stabilo, black Stabilo pencil, highly water soluble, and I'm activating it with a water brush. And once I'm done with that, then I go over her whole face with diluted cream acrylic, just for texture. And now this is the acrylic ink, alcohol ink that I make with the burnt umber, glycerin, and alcohol. It already had the glycerin in there. I just added more alcohol. I go over the entire piece, including her face. I just started around the perimeter first. And you can see all of the texture there from the tissue paper. And I'm tearing up the tissue paper to add more at the top. And here is a close-up of how that looks later. It's amazing. And this is crumpled copy paper. Tons and tons and tons of wrinkles in there, lots of texture. And later it comes in handy to make hydrangeas. This is old book paper. And so far, the process is fairly normal. It gets a little crazy. I'll warn you. This is a Jane Davenport finishing line pen. I used two of them. One, I started with the chisel, and then I used another one that was more like a brush pen. So I'm going over all of the lines, and this is permanent ink, which is really important for this process because I always saturate the face. This is a number 2 pencil, and I'm adding a lot of graphite to her lips and her eyes because I'm going to use a blending stump, which should be called the magic tool because it makes the graphite darker as you go over it. It's just unbelievable. Like right here, as it hits the graphite, it just gets darker for shading. I love this tool. So look what happens to her eyelids. There's nothing on, it's just rolled paper. And it's great for the sides of the nose. I mean, you could really add a little bit or a lot. Look at how dark the upper lip gets. It's a magic tool. And she's coming along. So here I am adding the acrylic ink in brown, and now I'm adding some black acrylic ink that I also made to the same area at the top. So it looks different. If I would have just added the black, it wouldn't look this way, but because I added the burnt umber acrylic ink first, it looks nice the way they layer. And there's so much texture there. So I am being mindful of her hairline. I don't want to go too low. And now it's dry. It's very matte. And now I am, I guess you could say, glazing the lower half. And call me crazy, but she can pass for Elon Musk's sister. Leave a comment below if you agree with me. I was like, wow, she definitely could. And she looks very like Hollywood. It's like not what I was going for. And she changes as I work on her because I have a goal. But yeah, she looks very Hollywood, very classy. Definitely related to Elon Musk. And so now I am just adding shadows to her hairline and under her jaw. And then going darker on the sides, picking up all of the texture from that crumpled copy paper. It's amazing. I mean, if I was going for a different piece, I would love the way this looks because I love black and brown. And so just adding, drying, back and forth, adding, drying. And now I'm adding some paper that I cut on my Sizzix with a thinlet, I think it's called. And this is from a kit, a flower, and you can see on the inset what I ended up doing to it. So I'm breaking down the fibers here. I'm adding, this is kind of like a coral pink acrylic, and it doesn't make the cut, so I'm not spending too much time on it. And all right, it gets crazy here. Crazy warning. So I went over everything that I just did, but with the, I think it's vintage white. But then I went over all of that when it was dry with the glazing, the brown glaze. But look what I did to her face. But it's all good. It's all good. Hit her face with rubbing alcohol. And you know what's really amazing? She actually enters into the phase right here where she's totally vintage. I mean, she did not look that way before I did that. So you just have to be brave and just go for it and see what you get. So now I am adding white again, adding it to the flower, just trying to break down those fibers and change it completely. And so this is PanPastel in kind of like a buttermilk. And I'm just going over, smoothing over her complexion, but then I'll hit it with the ink, and then I'll add more PanPastel, and then I'll hit it with the ink, and I go back and forth until I like how it looks. I mean, it's that simple. You stop when you like it. And so I'm going over the face again with the ink. And now I'm going over her face with diluted, I think the vintage white, with a water brush. Very, very diluted. And then when that was dry, I went into it with the pan pastel again. And so I'm just working it around. And when I was done with this phase, she looked like a geisha girl to me. And then went over it with the ink. And I like the way that looks. You see how it dried? And she's coming along. This is brown pan pastel, so I'm doing some contouring. And here I'm doing some vines with tiny leaves coming from the flower. And this is black pan pastel, so I'm doing some more contouring, mostly around the eyes. And then I'll work on the lips a little bit. I didn't go anywhere near the nose with the black pan pastel. So I'm still working on the vines. I love my vines. And now I'm just working on the complexion, brightening up the face and the neck. It's very thin. It's almost like milk. And here I am doing like kind of like suggesting the hair with very, very thin lines that are kind of wavy, and they're very, very close to each other, but they're not crisscrossing. And I end up filling that whole space in. You'll see it at the end. Here I'm using colored pencils, a reddish brown and a dark brown, to work all around the eyebrows, under the eyes, the lips. And so, speaking about the end, this is, by the way, clear gesso, because I'm going to do those two flowers, the hydrangeas, and I'm using soft pastels, and I need a gritty surface. Here I'm going over the eyes with black gel pen. But in the end, if you can stick around, here I'm going over all of the texture from the wrinkled, crumpled copy paper, and catching all of those wrinkles with the soft pastel stick in like a bright coral, and it instantly looks like a hydrangea. And I spritzed it with fixative. I was sure to cover her face. And so this is Jane Davenport's palette pastels. But if you could stick around to the end, I have a lot of still shots and close-ups of how she looks out of the bright lights. So not only do I have the still shots, but also the panned shot. That's like a Marigold pastel by PanPastels. So I thought adding that color to her complexion and the flowers was a good idea. Adding some highlights with pastels, a pastel stick, and now with Alfalfa green acrylic, adding some leaves, and this is olive green acrylic going over the alfalfa. So I'm adding some leaves to those hydrangeas. Just, undefined, just some color blocks. Some brown to her neck. And you can see when I bend the paper, that's how she looks. And I'm going to work on her eyes. You'll really see how she looks, like right here. So I'm working on her pupils and the shadow under her top lid. And you can see all of the colors. I mean, it's like browns and khakis and kind different shades of corals, and you can see all the textures, and you see the green. I think she is like really pretty, if I must say so myself. Little eye shine with diluted white in a precision bottle. And now to make those leaves pop out, I'm using a Sharpie marker, and not really a fan of those kind of black lines on a piece like this. I feel like it cheapens it a little bit, but I really wanted them to stand out, and I went over them with brown, light brown PanPastel. Here I'm doing a vine right over her eye. Actually, two of them. Right over her right eye. And here I am toning down the Sharpie marker lines with the brown PanPastel. And she is done. So this is a still of her face. And this is a still of the tissue paper at the top and the flower, how it turned out, and the hydrangeas and the leaves. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I did. If you have any questions about my crazy process or the materials I used, which I've detailed below, leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. And if you're new to my channel and you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will, because I upload regularly. Until the next video, take care. I'll see you soon.